consensus. In fact, I run away from it. Consensus is what everybody else thinks, such as the consensus of scientists on global warming. You cannot have consensus in science. Science is not up for a vote. It doesn't matter that 90% of scientists think anything. That doesn't make anything so, and it doesn't make anything scientifically unassailable. Scientists use various theories to establish credibility of theorems and various other ideas that they have, and it's constantly tested. It's not up to somebody's opinion, and it's not up to somebody's vote. But the whole notion of groupthink and consensus is that, and this is another way of saying what the media does. Let me illustrate it this way. I've made the point over the years, recent number of years, that when the media reports a story, they have this knack of making it appear that everybody thinks this. And so that if you're an outlier or if you don't think that, you're in a tiny little minority, and then you become castigated and regarded as a kook or whatever. It's nothing more than groupthink and consensus. And it exists because the people who believe in groupthink or consensus are simply people who do not wish, cannot accept, or cannot deal with a challenged worldview or an alternative idea about anything, because they have developed this little safety of a cocoon in which they live, and they congregate together. And if anybody, it doesn't matter if it's climate change or any other issue, if anybody comes along and doesn't comport and doesn't go along with it, that person has to be stigmatized, destroyed, and cast out. And what happens when everybody falls prey to groupthink or consensus, that's the end of truth. That is the end of inquiry. It's the end of curiosity, and it's the end of suspicion. Now, in our era here, somebody has to define the groupthink. Somebody has to be the quote-unquote leader of it. Global warming or climate change is one of the most convenient ways to illustrate this. But almost all of these groupthink or consensus beliefs originate on the left, and that's why everything in America is becoming politicized. I played golf on Saturday with a noted Hollywood actor. I can mention his name because, of course, I did not seek his permission to share details of discussions. One of the things when people talk to me, I assure them it's all off the record. And we were talking about Hollywood's bad box office. And I said, what do you think of the theory Hollywood believes it's Rotten Tomatoes is the reason why the box office is down? He said, what? I said, Rotten Tomatoes, the crowdsourced public review and opinions of movies. He said, no, that's not what it is. How long has Rotten Tomatoes been around? I said, a long time. He said, right, so why now is Hollywood having a... Cut to the chase. He believes that Hollywood's politicization of their entertainment medium is now starting to catch up to them. Look at the National Football League. The National Football League opening game Thursday night, Tom Brady, biggest marquee star in the NFL against Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing else going on except the hurricane forecasting. And their ratings were down 17%. I mean, it was a huge decline. And people said, well, it was the hurricane. Yeah, except the U.S. Open, being televised the next night, was up 36%, while the hurricane coverage was even more intense. It's not what it is. It is the politicization of everything. And especially now, our entertainment venues, entertainment options, everything's becoming political. You can't escape it. They're forcing it on you. And there are, however many people voted for Trump, 60 million, whatever the number is, there are that many people who are, at one stage or another, resisting all of this. They're either not going to the movies, they're not watching the drive-by media, they're not watching the NFL. It is a slow creep that is happening. And, of course, the leaders of these industries trying to figure this out because of groupthink and because of consensus cannot be honest with themselves about what their problems are, which means they're never going to be able to fix them. You look, ESPN's numbers and subscribers are way, way down. I mean, hellishly so. And that's bringing down Disney. And there's something in common with all of this, and that is the politicization. At the Steelers-Browns game yesterday, I don't know how many people know this. They had a problem, one of the preseason games, a number of Browns players sat down for the national anthem or otherwise protested it. And so the Browns players decided to do something different. They recorded a 30-second video that was played in the stadium on the scoreboard, and it featured several African-American Browns players listing their grievances, their social justice grievances. And they demanded that the owner and his wife be part of this, which the owner and his wife did. And in exchange for that, the players linked hands and didn't sit down, I don't believe, for the national anthem. Now, I guarantee you, I don't know if the networks played the video or not. I watched the game, but I caught it late. We've been going through some interesting travel logistics here. But I don't know that the network played it, but I guarantee the people in the stands, if they saw it, that's not why they're there. It's not why they're paying these exorbitant prices. And so this creeping consensus or groupthink or liberalism, I mean, whatever you want to call it, is creeping into virtually every aspect of life. Eric Bolling. You all know who Eric Bolling is. He was an up-and-coming anchor and personality at Fox News. He's a very conservative man who was a former commodities trader. He was hired by Roger Ailes at Fox, and he ended up having his own show at 5 p.m. called The Specialists. And then came the sexual harassment or harassment complaints. They took Eric off the air while they investigated. Then last week they announced that his suspension was permanent, to be fired. Investigation, I guess, had determined that he had engaged in this. The next day, his 19-year-old son died. And they think it was a drug overdose. Social media overflowed with human debris celebrating the death of Eric Bolling's son, claiming Eric Bolling deserved to have his son die because of all the horrible things Eric Bolling has said about African Americans and women. Now, I don't know a single thing Eric Bolling has said about African Americans and women. And I don't know the details of Eric Bolling's circumstances after having been alleged to have engaged in sexual harassment. But that's pure pond scum. And that's infesting social media. And it's growing. And it's sponsored. It's promoted. And this encroaching, degradatory. I mean, these are the people who talk about we need to bring out the better versions of ourselves. These people are corrupting everything. They're anonymous. They get to say whatever they want to say, but I guarantee you, people that go on social media and read this stuff, it cannot help but affect you when you're inundated by it, when you can't escape it. Imagine, and it only works one way, if a leftist TV or movie personality's son had died and noted conservatives went on social media and celebrated and said the leftist celebrity deserved it, the drive-by media would find out who they did it and make it the lead story on the nightly news. And it would be a subject for the whole week about how mean-spirited all of this conservatism is. While liberalism and its associated activities are literally destroying the fabric of our society in terms of morality and decency and behavior, while demanding that everybody behave and talk as they do or else. So here comes Hurricane Irma. And when Hurricane Irma starts, I'm observing something that is phenomenal to me. The original forecast tracks of Hurricane Irma. And we've got the ditto cam here, right? Let me find this for you. I want to find the original. I want you to look at these original tracks here. You see that? Now, if you look at the state of Florida, and on your right of the state of Florida is where everybody thought this hurricane was going to go for a week before they changed their minds. You see, all of those models taking this hurricane, Hurricane Irma, out to the Atlantic Ocean, maybe up to North Carolina, South Carolina. Those are the original tracks. And it was during those forecasts that in South Florida, a run on bottled water began, to the point that there was no bottled water in South Florida while the forecast track looks, as you see, to the right or east of Florida there. Well, now, I'm a social commentator as well as a political commentator. I found that fascinating. How can there be a run on water with a hurricane forecast that's not even expected to hit us? Now, granted, these are long range, but there's a lot of them. Just the vast majority, look at it again, the vast majority of those models, and included in there is the NHC, the real track. You can dig it out there. I can't get close here, but you can dig it out, the real track that went up the west coast of Florida. By the way, it didn't hit Tampa. All night last night, going to wreck Tampa, going to ruin Tampa. I was watching it. It wasn't going to go to Tampa. It did go to Marco Island and Naples. Anyway, during all of this, there's a run on water, bottled water, to the point that in West Palm Beach, a semi-trailer delivery of bottled water to a grocery store had to be protected by local police for fear that people would show up and try to rob or steal. And I said, why is this happening when this hurricane isn't even going to hit here? At least according to these forecasts. So I explained how the world works. I explained how local media seeks to hype these storms because it's good for ratings, and it's also good for grocery stores and advertisers that sell things you need during a hurricane. Meanwhile, the forecast tracks don't have it anywhere near. They got closer and closer and closer during the 10 days, or maybe it was a week. And then I suggested, folks, there's no reason to panic. You have water in your house right now. It's called a faucet. All you have to do is go get some empty bottles and fill them up. And there's your water. And it's, in many cases, it's the same stuff that you're going to buy in the bottles. And it's going to be a lot cheaper. So you can get some Ziploc bags, fill them 75% full, put them in the freezer as a standby. Smart advice. Reasonable advice, economical advice. Never did I say the hurricane wasn't going to hit because nobody knows. Never did I say the hurricane was not a bad one. Never did I say you should ignore the forecast. Never. Nothing that is out there that I supposedly said on social media is true. And I defy any of you SJWs to call here and run by anything you've heard that I said. And let me explain the truth to you. 800-282-2882. This is a series of lies and misstatements, and this is because I do not heal. I do not join everybody in the conventional wisdom, the consensus, and the groupthink. I did not join in the panic. I did not join in helpless wailing and, oh, woe is me. I did not join in any of the things, and I specifically didn't join the idea that global warming or climate change was causing this. I also pointed out that whenever a storm like this happens, you can't avoid it. In the media, people are going to say it's nothing, it's happening because of climate change, it's stronger than ever because of this is the seventh largest hurricane to hit Florida. Seventh. Hurricane in 1935 Labor Day, much stronger than Hurricane Irma. That's before anybody knew about CO2 and the greenhouse effect and climate change. Shouldn't the hurricanes today be far worse than ever if what they're saying is true? You're not supposed to think this way, and you're not supposed to ask that question. You're not supposed to give people an alternative way of looking at something outside the groupthink. If you do, they're going to come after you and try to destroy your credibility and smear you because they have an agenda that they seek to advance using every public event they can. And got to take a break, folks. My clocks are off here, so I don't really know where I am. Go ahead, hit it. I told you, hit this. This smear is unlike most of the previous attempts that the left has made, because there isn't even a misunderstood joke to base this on. There's no insult to anybody to base this on. This has been based on a complete fabrication and intentional misrepresentation of what I said. I never said the hurricane was fake news. I never said it wasn't going to be big. I never said to ignore the forecast. I never said anything that you have heard Al Roker or anybody else in the drive-by media say. But because I don't subscribe to the groupthink, because I don't subscribe to consensus, they think I don't care. And when you don't care, why, that's the greatest sin of all. And that's what they think is going at, which gives them the justification. But I wanted to deal with this, folks, because it's just, this is the worst example of a smear that I have experienced yet. We'll be back much more straight ahead. Don't go away. Stunning to me how many people actually believe that hurricanes are a recent phenomenon brought about by man-made climate change. If you're a millennial or an iGen, if you're under 34, it is shocking what you don't know. It's shocking the lies that you have been taught and the lies that you see as factual news each and every day. It's stunning, folks. Literally stunning. I read a piece today on Florida because it got hit by the hurricane. Nobody knows how many hurricanes have hit Florida. Florida was uninhabitable at the time this nation was discovered. Zachary Taylor, a United States president, went down there once fighting the Seminole Indians, and he said, you know what? This place is hell. This place is I wouldn't trade you a square mile of Michigan for the entire state of Florida. It wasn't until recently in national terms that Florida was even settled. And it was actually begun by a man named Henry Flagler. He built a railroad down there, and it wasn't until we had advanced with the ability to move a lot of earth, but manage water. Florida wasn't just the Everglades. The whole state was a swamp. It was nothing but mosquitoes and humidity, and it was so hot that it was uninhabitable long before climate change ever became some dream in a scientist's brain, long before anybody knew anything about fossil fuels and CO2. It was uninhabitable. Nobody knows how many hurricanes have hit Florida, but I'll tell you what they do know, that the hurricane on Labor Day 1935 is the strongest and the worst. Irma is number 7. There is no way that climate change made this hurricane or Katrina or Wilma, which hit in 2000, any of these, worse than what's come before it. Everything about the weather, if related to climate change, is largely exaggerated, untrue, or politicized. And yet that's what a growing percentage of Americans believe. And you can't blame them. That's all they've been taught, and that's all they've been told. It's just mind-boggling when you realize, and that's just one topic, climate change and weather. When that gets politicized, you have to realize when the NFL gets politicized, movies have been politicized for a while. Everything is. Then you have to understand. Okay, well, who's doing the politicizing and why? And the answers are inescapable. I happen to have answers, and I happen to explain them, and I happen to do it effectively, and so I am a target because I don't go with the groupthink, and many of you don't. That's why Donald Trump's elected. Donald Trump is elected by people who refuse to go along with the consensus, with the groupthink, with the way of thinking. It's an amazing thing. I literally can tell you now that, and I think most of you know this, the odds are, if you see anything written or broadcast about me in the mainstream media, the odds are most of it or all of it is untrue. That has to be your default position now. when reading it. And it's not just me. It's by no means is it just me. But I happen to be the Mr. Big of the vast right-wing conspiracy. And so taking out me, they think, can take out a lot of the way of thinking. Now, look at this. Hill.com. Joe Concha. Joe Concha, I always thought was a good guy. I mean, I've seen Joe Concha on Fox News, and Joe Concha, when my name has come up, has been accurate in reporting. I mean, look at this. The Hill.com, this is from September the 8th. What's the date today? This is the 11th. This is 3 days ago. So it'd be Friday, right? Limbaugh to evacuate after calling Irma climate change ploy. I did not call Irma a climate change ploy. Rush Limbaugh will be evacuating his home in Palm Beach, Florida, just days after stating that creating panic around hurricanes helps advance a climate change agenda. Somebody tell me what's not true in that paragraph. I did evacuate. I got out of there. You know why? We lose power and phones can't do the show out of there. I would love to stay. I would love to experience one of these things. But I am forced by my broadcast partners to get out of there because there's a business to run. But I would love to stay. We are fine, by the way. I'm reluctant to say so because so many people aren't, but people have been asking. Do you have any doubt Limbaugh will be evacuating his home after stating that creating panic around hurricanes helps advance a... It does, and that's... I have a story here, let's see, it's a Breitbart. Irma at landfall comes in 7th behind 1935 Labor Day storm, and what they've done, they've published all the links of one Google search on climate change and hurricane, and it just goes on and on and on. Everybody in the drive-by media linked climate change to this, and some of them in the drive-by media got mad that it wasn't being done enough. Some guy named Ali Velshi, who I think used to be at CNN, now is over at PMSNBC, spent the whole afternoon Saturday worrying that not enough people in the media were linking Hurricane Irma to climate change. By virtue of doing that, he was linking Hurricane Irma to climate change. Nothing I said was wrong. This is the next paragraph. May as well announce this. I'm not going to get into details because of the security nature of things, but it turns out we'll not be able to do the program here tomorrow. That's why I said this on Thursday, meaning Friday. We'll be on the air next week. What does that prove? What in the world does it prove? Because I never said the hurricane wasn't coming. I never said it wasn't going to be a Category 4. I never called it fake news. All I did was tell the truth about it. And I explained how the world works, and this is intolerable. In the groupthink sphere, it's intolerable in the consensus sphere. And don't forget, these are the people claim to be the tolerant one. These are the people claiming to be for fairness and equality and sameness and all this. But boy, you don't say what they want to hear, and they will bust your head. Controversy swirled around Limbaugh throughout the week after the 66-year-old said that while he's not a meteorologist, I did point this out because I didn't want people to take what I was saying as in any way official. That was a smart thing to do. This is just beyond my ability to comprehend, especially coming from Concha. Controversy swirled around Limbaugh throughout the week after he said that while he's not a meteorologist and nothing he says should be considered to be a forecast or a prediction. Right, it's quoting, I didn't predict anything, didn't forecast anything, didn't call it fake news, didn't tell anybody to behave according to what I think you should do. Never went there. Limbaugh believes that hurricanes are often hyped to help increase ratings on the media side while driving sales for retailers who offer storm support. Prove to me that that isn't true. You're just not supposed to say it. That's the offense. Where are the fact checks to prove that media outlets never use storms to increase ratings? If I'm so wrong about this, where is the fact check? Where's the evidence that this doesn't happen in the media? There is a desire, quotes me again, desire to advance the climate change agenda. Hurricanes are one of the fastest and best ways to do it. And he goes on to quote me as saying, you know what, you don't even need the hurricane. And by the way, let me come back to these. You don't even need the hurricane to hit. Panic was created when all of those models that you see to the east of Florida, this was a week before the hurricane hit, that's where they thought that was going to go. And yet they were creating a run on plywood and other supplies, batteries and stuff, and water, a week out, when the forecast wasn't even including Florida. How'd they do that? They create fear, create panic. Why? It advances they didn't even need this hurricane to hit anywhere in order to create the agenda or advance the agenda with fear and panic. Just the thought that it might, and that it's bigger than ever. And then they got on me for pointing out how they create these graphics on TV, these giant red blobs trying to make you think the whole storm. And I pointed out that the giant red blob is not the whole storm. And what that mostly indicates is the altitude of the highest clouds, where the opportunity for convection, i.e. rainfall, is the greatest. But the whole storm is not where the max winds are. In this case, the eye was a 35-mile wide diameter. That was where the biggest wind. That's big. All I did was point out things that are demonstrably true. And for that, the smear began, and all of it was made up. I know we got to go to a break, but grab audio soundbite number one. I just want to give you an example of how this manifests itself. This is Friday in Washington at FEMA. Emergency Management Agency. The administrator, Brock Long, held a press conference, and get this question from an unidentified reporter.
There's even some prominent voices like conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh who's saying this is fake news, the threat is overblown. What would you like to tell those people right now?
Nobody in Florida that I know has ever experienced a Category 4 or 5 storm making landfall. I can guarantee you that I don't know anybody in Florida that's ever experienced what's about to hit South Florida.
Well, in the first place, I never said that it was fake news, and I never said the threat was overblown. What I said was that all those early days out, they're creating the fear and advancing the climate change agenda, and the evidence is by virtue of the fact that a run on stores happened a week out. Anyway, he doesn't know anybody in Florida has ever experienced a Category 4 or 5 storm making landfall. Well, there may not be anybody alive that was alive in 1935 now, but it's happened, is the point. It's happened. This was not the first time. But my argument's not with the FEMA guy. The FEMA guy has to say what he has to say. But this drive-by journalist here, who I don't know who it was, just, there's no curiosity among journalists. They read that I say something, automatically accept it. They're not even curious. Really? Somebody actually said that, and they don't run it down or check because they don't want it to not be true. They want it to be true, so they just pretend that it is and use it. And that's an example of how this manifests itself and metastasizes all over the place. And these are the people that end up spreading disinformation. These are the people that end up causing real damage because they are the people telling people things that aren't true. Anyway, I got to take a break. I'm up against it again on the clock. We'll be back and continue. That's about it for this, folks. There are other examples of this, but this is the biggest attempt these people have made yet. And there's not even a bad joke or even a controversial thing I said about it. It's just that I zeroed in on their agenda and that I'm not playing along, I'm not going along, and so that's unacceptable. That can't be stopped. That can't be tolerated. So they behave as they do. Be right back. I've just now got the transcript here. Let's see what this says.
The worldwide media and their audiences have gaped in horror at the raw power of these storms. And why? Because of our transparent catastrophe bias.
There haven't been more hurricanes, and they're no more dangerous than any others in previous years. But it doesn't matter, because the bias is built in. There is a desire to advance this climate change agenda, and hurricanes are one of the fastest and best ways to do it.
That was Rush Limbaugh, who, along with much of the right-wing media, is constitutionally incapable of processing the news without seeing a liberal plot.
Yeah, we can't look at the news without seeing liberalism. That's because it's there, Bob. I wish we could miss it. I wish it wasn't there, Bob. But it's there. I'm sorry, I wish it wasn't there, Bob. But it is. And we discuss it as we see it here on the EIB network. Yes, lovely. Right-wing media constitutionally incapable of processing the news without seeing a liberal plot. So you see, you don't subscribe to the groupthink. You don't subscribe to the belief, oh yeah, these hurricanes are worse than ever, and climate change is causing them. Why? Well, after Hurricane Katrina, Al Gore had his famous movie and book, and he assured everybody that Katrina was just the beginning, and they're all going to be worse, and they're going to be more frequent. But what happened? We went 12 years without a major hurricane striking land in the United States. What happened? What happened, Al Gore's? Do you think anybody looks back in the drive-by media and say Al Gore blew it? Al Gore got it wrong? No. They just wait for the next storm and they hype the hell out of it and they start making their point as though the 12 years didn't happen. But then when an expert is asked about it, like Katie Tour, whose mother is now a man, by the way, or whose father is now a woman, I forget. She's an NBC info babe. She was interviewing Sam Champion. And I think we have this in the sound bites, but anyway, she mentioned to him, but look, Sam, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, Sam, but there were 12 years that went by without a major... And Champion was befuddled. Because Sam Champion, big global warming, climate change believer. And he didn't know how to answer the question. And she was just reluctant as she could be to even ask it. She was just having all kinds of problems. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Even when they're asked a question about it, they hem and haw and come up with convenient answers for it. Anyway, let me grab a quick phone call here. We're going to start at Gaithersburg, Maryland. This is... Oh, I don't have time. Folks, I'm sorry. I've got to take a break. Just so you know, my clock says 12 minutes to the hour. So let me take a break. We'll come back and wrap it up, and I'll get this clock situation. There's one here that's right, but it's digital, and I don't look in that direction, and never mind. We'll get it fixed. Back after this, folks. And we will be getting to phone calls in this hour. It's 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Yes, everybody thinks that Hurricane Irma was it. It was the worst storm ever. Oh, my God. Well, Hurricane Andrew, 1992, a Category 5. The FEMA director said he didn't know anybody in Florida that has ever experienced a Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane. He may not know any, but there's a lot of people that did. Hurricane Andrew, 1992, Category 5, 145 knots. Somebody do the quick, what is the mile per hour conversion? Just asks. Okay, so it's about to be 160 miles an hour, 145. Hang on. Let me just ask Siri. Convert 145 knots to miles per hour. I didn't get it on in time. Anyway, it's going to be around 160 miles an hour. Hurricane Charlie in 2004, a Category 4, hit Florida. 2004, 13 years ago. And then there's Hurricane Irma this past weekend, 115 knots, 130 miles an hour, or 125. I think it was 130 at the center. It was a weak Category 4 when it hit Marco Island. So there are two stronger, and before 25 years ago, hurricanes at least as strong as Irma hit Florida in 1960, 1950, 1949, 1948, 1947, 1945, 1935, which was the big one, 1928, 1926, let me add about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 hurricanes before these three that I mentioned hit Florida that were at least as strong, if not stronger, than Hurricane Irma. Now, this is not to mitigate the damage that Hurricane Irma did. That's not my point here. We're talking about truth. We're talking about honesty in media. We're talking about people that are lying and making things up in order to create an emotional reaction that promotes groupthink and consensus and the acceptance of this agenda, when the facts clearly indicate that what they're saying isn't true. And that's the big problem I have, is not going along with the groupthink or the consensus and pointing all this stuff out. So it has to get mischaracterized. There's also a story here. This was at The Intercept. Now, this is a website that Glenn Greenwald works at. This Intercept website is where they spend a lot of time on Edward Snowden. Snowden was a participant, a collaborator with this website. I don't have an opinion on that, pro or con. I'm just identifying for you the website. It's and it's liberal and left wing. And there's a piece here by somebody named Naomi Klein. Irma will not wake up. Climate change denying Republicans their whole ideology is on the line. You see, it's the exact opposite. It is liberalism's ideology that's on the line. Who is it that's making all this stuff up? We're not. We're just living our lives, and every day we wake up and the left is telling us something else is going to kill us, that something else is going to damage us, that something else is the reason why government needs to grow, that something else is the reason why taxes need to go up, that something else is the reason why certain people need to be shut up. Every day we're hit with something. We cannot, all we do is spend our time defending things we believe in, which are under constant assault from these people, now including even the weather and the climate. It's not us trying to scare people. It's not us trying to do. We're just minding our own business. They are the people that make all these things up for the express purpose of advancing their agenda, and it's their agenda that depends on as many people as possible believing BS. And if you look at the end result of this, the political point in all of this is bigger government, global government, but bigger and more powerful government that punishes people who do not behave accordingly. The climate change thing has been especially brilliant because what they've done is blame you. Your barbecue pit, your SUV, your very way of life, particularly if your standard of living is increasing. If you are participating in progress, you are the problem. You're causing more CO2. You're causing more climate change. You're causing greenhouse. But you can be saved. You can be redeemed if you admit and then join others in condemning the very things that you've done. And then you agree that those people should be punished and that they can be redeemed if they go out and buy an electric car or if they vote for the next Democrat candidate or if they support massive government growth in anything, particularly in science. And everybody, who wants to be blamed for destroying the planet? I mean, nobody wants to be thought of as doing that. Who wants to be blamed for ruining the climate? So you're eager for absolution, and they offer it to you if you simply join them and vote the way they want for the people they want you to vote for and agree to massive expansion of government, which includes more government control of everything, because, of course, government will predict us. I actually think the media bias deniers are a lot more obvious and dangerous than climate change deniers. The people that deny media bias, the people say there isn't any, pose a far greater threat than people denying climate. Here, grab soundbite number 3. Same guy from NPR, Bob Garfield. This is Friday, and I want you to listen how the misrepresentation, things that I never said, ends up being exaggerated and then spread way, way out there.
So desperate was he to find a conspiracy, the world's loudest Republican managed to find fault with commerce.
You have these various retail outlets who spend a lot of advertising dollars with the local media. The local media, in turn, reports in such a way as to create the panic way far out, which sends people into these stores to fill up with water and to fill up with batteries, and it becomes a never-ending repeated cycle.
Never mind the deaths, the ruined lives, the shattered economies, and the hundreds of billions of dollars of storm damage. It's all rigged, and you are all naive fools, just so's you know.
And, of course, none of that did I ever say. I simply told you how the world works. And I showed you those hurricane model forecasts where they weren't going to hit Florida, and yet they created panic and a run on water and other things in Florida with just the forecast. And by the way, even 2 days before, 3 days, they thought the east coast of Florida was going to get it, and it went up the west coast. But I was not criticizing commerce. I was explaining to people how things happen. He thought he had a big news item. You're a big conservative, big pro-business, now criticizing commerce. That's how crazy they are to make their point. And, of course, he doesn't have the capacity because his mind isn't open enough to understand. They don't even listen. If somebody other than what they think speaks, it's automatically rejected. It isn't even considered. It's not factored. It just is automatically rejected and then ridiculed. And whoever says whatever they don't want to hear ends up the subject of an attempt to destroy, smear, or what have you. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. And I'm really reluctant. I asked a bunch of people what they thought about doing this. And I decided to go ahead and do it because I don't read social media and I don't spend any time on it. And I, as you know, as a policy, I ignore all of the stuff for 30 years that people have said about me. But I had somebody, Rush, this is the biggest smear yet. I mean, they're literally making up things that you didn't say and putting it out there, and then people are commenting on it, and it's feeding off of itself. Now, I don't expect this to change anything about that. I just wanted, you people in this audience are very important to me. And it's important that you know the truth about these things so that, should you find yourself in a position to, you can accurately and confidently respond and defend some of the garbage that these people are spewing. But again, it's not just about me. These people are destroying so many other elements of our lives and of our country. By politicizing virtually everything, including those things which have always provided an escape for 3 or 4 hours from the humdrum and the daily back and forth of things that matter, such as sports and such as movies and such as entertainment. Now, in addition to all of this, a couple other things we want to get into. Hillary and her book, and some of the things that are being said in this book are just too juicy to pass up. And I haven't weighed in to the full extent that I want to on Trump's deal with quote-unquote Chuck and Nancy and what that means, what that portends. That is, and I don't think it's a one-off. I don't think it's just a one-shot thing that Trump did. I think there's potentially many more things like this that could happen. And I know the reason why. And that is that he's totally frustrated with the lack of apparent desire and apparent energy on the part of Republicans to advance any part of his agenda, which he won on. I mean, if there's a presidential candidate in recent memory who has a mandate, it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump, 5 rallies a day, and at every one of those rallies, he spelled out what he was going to do. And you know the drill. He's going to build a wall. He was going to repeal or replace Obamacare. He's going to cut taxes and things on trade deals. I mean, there's no mystery about what Donald Trump is going to do. And his own party is his biggest obstacle in his mind. And so he doesn't like sitting there not getting things done. And I'm told that he absolutely loved what they were saying on MSNBC after he did the deal with Chuck and Nancy. That he felt renewed, that he felt enthused. He felt, finally, I got something done here, and I'm getting praise for it, getting accolades for it. And somebody like Trump, that matters. It matters to everybody, actually. I mean, nobody wants to have things said about them that are said about Trump. But you talk about smears and lies. Guess what? It has also been leaked that Mueller doesn't have anything on the Trump kids and their meetings with the Russians. Nothing there. You have to look real hard to find that. I looked real hard and I found it. That's coming up. Bannon's interview on 60 Minutes. You know what I'm told they did? I didn't watch it. I don't watch 60 Minutes since I last appeared on it. But apparently they did some color things with his face to make him look darker red, and his eyes appear to be watery and so forth. And the thought is that they deviled him up, made him look devilish and so forth. Look, we know this happens. We know the media plays. Look at OJ and the Time magazine. There's countless examples of that kind of distortion and lies in the drive-by media as well. Plus your phone calls, which I'm gonna make a stab at. I'm making sure we got time after this break to get to the phones. Coming right back, right after this. And we start in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Bob, great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, Rush.
Hey.
I just wanted to ask you if you're aware that when a winter storm cancels a global warming conference in the nation's capital.
Why are we getting feedback on this guy's call? Is it his phone? Is he... Bob, you're doing something there that's causing feedback here, and it could well...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Start the beginning here. What about canceling a snowstorm?
I'm sorry. Did you know that when a global warming conference when a winter storm causes a conference to be canceled, only the scientifically illiterate would use anecdotal evidence. But when a storm occurs, it is valid evidence.
It is what?
It's valid evidence for global climate change.
Yeah, I'm not. We've still got some crazy things happening on your phone line, but I think he mentioned something about a climate change conference canceled because of a snowstorm. Okay. Everywhere Al Gore goes for a climate change session, it usually has snow accompanying it. It's actually one of the funniest things. But there are a couple stories along those lines. If this is what Bob's talking about. And this is from just 3 days ago. Net increase in Greenland ice mass. First time this century amid Northern Hemisphere cool down. And what happened here is a bunch of scientists were going up to Antarctica to study global warming, and they found more ice than they ever dreamed of, and they couldn't get to where they were going. The same thing happens to a bunch of researchers 2 or 3 times going to Antarctica. And one of those expeditions got stuck in the ice, and we had to send some icebreaker from Australia or somewhere down to rescue these people. I mean, folks, the thing about this, these people believe this. This is what's stunning. They have no curiosity whatsoever. They believe this so-called consensus of scientists, and the people on the left, I mean, the worker bees, not the leaders, they don't question it. They just believe it. They don't challenge it. And even some of these scientists get caught up in all this and actually believe the wrong things. They believe there's climate change and the ice caps are melting, and they're on these expeditions to prove it. And they find out there's more ice than there's ever been, and they're shocked and stunned. We have to rescue them. The National Snow and Ice Data Center was forced to admit overall, however, reduced melting and heavy early springtime snowfall may result in a net increase in Greenland's ice mass this year for the first time this century. Not supposed to be happening with climate change. The 2017 melt season has been less intense than recent years and is below average melting for the 1981 to 2010 reference period. Everything's out of whack. They believe it. They act on it. When they confront reality, they find out what they think is happening isn't. Sometimes they write about it. Sometimes you hear about it. Sometimes they don't. You remember, folks, back on January 25th, 2016, the New York Times, which these people consider a Bible, and which millennials consider a Bible, the New York Times predicted the end of snow. They were not joking. They were not. It was a standard everyday news story predicting the end of snow. January 25th, 2016. It's been nearly a year and a half since the Times published that article claiming the end of snow was upon us because of man-made global warming. Europe has lost half of its alpine glacial ice since the 1850s. And if climate change is not reined in, 2/3 of European ski resorts will likely have to close by 2100. See, 2100. None of us are going to be alive in 2100 to know whether or not this is true or not, which is how they do all of their predictions. The next 30 years, the next 50 years, sea level will rise and sharks will be swimming in South Beach. In 50 years, in 45 years. Now the New York Times says the end of snow. Well, there's still snow in some ski resorts from last winter. They're just dead wrong about all this. And now the Pope is chiding Donald Trump. The Pope, I mean, when the Pope becomes infected with this stuff, that's a good indication of how far and wide the politicization of this, and it isn't science. It isn't provable. The only evidence there is of climate change is in the computer models that they have built to forecast it. There is no evidence of it. That's the really crazy thing here. There isn't any evidence. There is no hard empirical data. And for there to be, you would have to accept the idea that this point of time in the Earth's entire billions of year history is what the norm is, which we also don't know that either. We don't know what the normal climate is. Glacial ages have been warming. It's just, all of this is so patently absurd and so few people question it. So few people are curious. So few people are skeptical. And when somebody comes along who is, it constitutes a threat that cannot stand. Anyway, we will continue. We'll go back to the phones after the break here at the bottom of the hour. Stick with us. Super secured and private location out on the left coast. And we'll be here, I don't know, it all depends on getting phone lines back at the EIB Southern Command. When that happens, then we can get back there. But as I say, I mean, it doesn't sound any different, right? Sounds just as good, doesn't matter where it comes from. And you know, this West Coast time zone stuff is cool. The football games last night ended at 8:30 instead of 11:30. Still had plenty of time for show prep. The game started at 10. I lived out here in Sacramento for 4 years in the 80s. And I like the Pacific time zone for a lot of reasons such as that during football season. Now, get this. You know, I keep saying that I'm going to move on to other things. I keep saying I've said what I've had to say. But they just keep sucking me back in by sending me this. This is Maud Behar on The View today. Now this, well, I don't want to characterize it. I just want you to listen to this. This was this morning on ABC's The View.
The heat is creating warm waters in the oceans, in the Gulf, wherever, and that is contributing to the intensity of storms like Irma. Why this is the worst storm we've ever seen, etc., has to do with climate change. And people who deny that, they should start naming all of these next hurricanes after Hurricane Limbaugh, Hurricane Pruitt, Hurricane Palin, you know, Hurricane Trump.
You hear those brainless wizards in the audience applaud. But I'd be honored if they'd name a hurricane after Hurricane Rush. I would be honored. I could be a great honor. But it'll never happen. Hurricane EIB, Hurricane Limbaugh, Hurricane Rush, Hurricane El Rushbo. But let's look at what she did. The heat is creating warm waters in the oceans, in the Gulf, wherever. And that is contributing to the intensity of storms like so. She's obviously been watching amateur scientists on TV explain how to fuel how hurricanes are fueled, and ocean water is just one example. You know what? Give you an idea how odd this stuff is. Over the weekend, I was reading some actual published in drive-by media sources, not social media comments or comments on websites. Somebody said what we really need to do, we need to have giant funnels out there. We need to put giant funnels in front of the oncoming hurricane and force all of that warm water on the surface down to the floor of the ocean so that the hurricane will not have any fuel. They were serious. Now, these are the people that believe we're causing all of this By doing what? Driving SUVs, by having barbecue pits go at the same time in the afternoon, by burning fossil fuels or what have you. I thought all we would have to do to stop these storms is stop living the way we're living. How are we going to stop it? We can't because we didn't cause it. But Maud Behar here, people who deny they should start naming all these next hurricanes Hurricane Limbaugh. She thinks this is the worst storm we've ever seen. She has no idea. There's no idea where this storm ranks. She's just an unquestioning sponge for the latest propaganda from the left on these, and she spreads it, and the brain-dead members of her audience soak it up and applaud it. If ocean water temperatures were the reason for hurricanes, how did we go 12 years without them? And if climate change is responsible for all of the surface sea temperatures rising, why didn't that cause any hurricanes to hit the United States of major status for 12 years? Not supposed to ask. Not even supposed to point it out. Not supposed to challenge the groupthink. Not supposed to challenge the consensus. It threatens these people. That's the amazing. It threatens them. Just disagreeing. Okay, who's next? Pete in Whitby, Ontario. Great to have you on the program, sir. How are you?
Hey, Rush, it'd be Hurricane Maharashi, and it'd be sweeping all the left-wing loons out and leave us conservatives behind. Listen, Rush, those of us that have listened to you for so long, whether it be in southern Ontario all the way through the United States and trickling into Mexico, we have a great passion for what you teach us, because it's all fact, it's all logic. What I don't get is we have to stick up for ourselves. I mean, I put this in the people that smush you out like that bleed these lies. Why do symbolically go after them? Sue them. I hate to say it, but it's one of those things for symbolically for a buck. Because that will bring the people that don't listen to you, at least 25 to 50% of them, into the mix, and they'll start hearing the truth. I think that's really important. To put in the same bag of tricks as we see what happens with Donald.
The problem is a suit. Look, I appreciate your sentiments. I really do appreciate your thoughts on that. But I'm too famous. Famous people can't sue for slander or libel. Famous people, public figures, are open targets. And the standard of proof that you have to essentially prove malice, which is obvious, but proving it is hard. Look at what happened to Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin, New York Times editorial, virtually lied about her, claiming that she was responsible for a mass shooting that injured Gabby Giffords. Sarah Palin wasn't there. She had nothing to do with it. The left totally made it up. You know what they did? On her website, she was talking about upcoming elections and primaries and so forth. And she had a bullseye, or actually crosshairs that you might see in a rifle scope, to represent target areas where Republicans should spend some money and campaign against Democrats. And the leftists said that icon, that depiction of a crosshairs, is what caused the shooter to go out and take shots at Gabby Giffords. I mean, it's insane. This guy that pulled it, even if somebody had gone to her website, the last thing anybody would think in looking at it, you know what, I'm going to go grab a shotgun and I'm going to go shoot a congressman. And 2 years after it has been totally destroyed, 2 years after it's been demonstrated that the guy didn't even know who Sarah Palin was because he's insane, the New York Times runs an editorial after a Democrat started shooting up Republicans at baseball practice in Virginia. The New York Times runs an editorial claiming, well, Sarah Palin did it first, and she sued them. She sued them for libel. And you know what the New York Times, before the case got thrown out, you know what the New York Times position was? Well, the editorial writers had not read the newspaper. And the editorial writers didn't know that the theory had been snuffed out. That was their defense. Because you have to prove malice. And that means you have to prove that they knew what they were saying wasn't true, and that they instead, in any way, ran it for the express purpose of harming and damaging, in this case, Sarah Palin. And so the Times' defense was to say that their editorial writers who wrote the editorial didn't know that she had been exonerated in this. But the point is, she was never officially charged. It was always made up by liberals. It was made up by leftists and other media. And since they don't question anything, I've never met a group of people who think they're the smartest people in the world who know so little and question so little and are so arrogant and condescending about it. I can't relate to somebody, by the way, who really believes that a crosshair icon on a website of a Republican politician could be responsible for a shooting of a Democrat congressman in, wherever it was, New Mexico, wherever it was. I don't know how you think that way. You have to want to think that way. You have to want to be able to destroy or tar and feather some. Meanwhile, this deranged lunatic leftist in Belleville, Illinois, actually grabs a gun and starts shooting at Republicans who are in baseball practice or upcoming game with Democrat members of Congress. And there's no effort made by the media to find out who might have inspired him to do that. What liberal media had he read? What made him so enraged that he would start shooting Republicans? Well, we knew because he'd put it all over his website and other places. But it was ignored or downplayed or what have you. So while conservatives are always accused of doing this, liberals actually have deranged lunatics out doing it. Another guy reading a Southern Poverty Law Center website found out in quotes, that the Family Research Council was a hate group. They happen to be pro-life. And that makes them a hate group. Oh, and they're said to be anti-LGBTQ. Nobody's anti-LGBTQ. Nobody has something against those people. It's the politics. It's always the politics that people oppose, not these individuals. But anyway, Southern Poverty Law Center writes them up as a hate group and puts them on a map. And so this deranged lunatic, they're in Maryland, this deranged lunatic walks in there and shoots people because of what he saw on a liberal website. Yet the Times has to make it up about Sarah Palin. She sued them, and the case was thrown out. But before it was thrown out, judge threw it out, forget the express legal reasoning why. But the reason the Times gave it, our editorial writers are really unfamiliar with that aspect of the news. They didn't know that the theory had been blown to smithereens. I mean, it was the nation's greatest newspaper, and your defense is that your editorial writers don't know what's been in the newspaper in previous days or weeks. Unbelievable. Be right back, folks. Hang on. I'm supposed to be. The reaction they want me to have is, oh my God, I better stop talking. Look what they're doing. Look, they're making up what I'm saying. This is really bad. It's hurting my reputation. The idea is suppression of speech. That's the objective of these people in the groupthink consensus, people on the left or what have you. You want to hear some fun sound bites? I mean, here we have another oracle of climate science. The actress Jennifer Lawrence, last Wednesday in the UK on Channel 4 News, she was doing an interview with social affairs editor Jackie Long about the new movie Mother. Question: when the director was asked about the film, why it was so dark, he said, well, it's a mad time to be alive. And it's certainly an end-of-days feeling about your movie. And for many people in America who would say, maybe it's truer there at the moment, it's the end of days because of Trump, you see. The end of days. And here's how noted climate science oracle Jennifer Lawrence answered that.
It's scary. It's this new language that's forming. I don't even recognize it. It's also scary to know it's been proven through science that climate change is due to human activity.
No,
and we
it
continue
hasn't.
to ignore it, and the only voice that we really have is through voting. And we voted, and it was really startling. You know, you're watching these hurricanes now, and it's hard, especially while promoting this movie, not to feel Mother Nature's rage, wrath.
She went on to say that Mother Nature did this hurricane to get back at America for voting for Donald Trump. She really said it. And she's not trying to be funny. This is what they tell themselves. I don't know that this is really what she thinks. I can't believe that she's that dense. But this is what they tell themselves to comfort themselves. They still can't get over that Hillary lost. I mean, that's the underlying foundation that's causing all the rest of the insanity. And so anything that makes them feel better. So a hurricane, yeah, Mother Nature's getting back at America. This is what happened for electing Donald Trump. And, of course, nobody comes along and says, Jennifer, are you sure about that? Sure you want to say? Nobody castigates her. Nobody, because she's on the right side of the groupthink. But, see, she believes we continue to ignore it. It's been proven through science, climate change due to human activity. No. It hasn't been proven. It has not. It cannot be proven, in fact. We don't have enough data for all the years before humanity. We don't have enough data for all the years before modern equipment to record the temperature. We don't have the evidence to make a statement like this. This is why it's become a religion. NBC Today Show, Savannah Guthrie speaking with, I got time, Florida Senator Bill Nelson about the impact of Hurricane Irma. And something happened because it didn't turn out to be quite as bad as some people said it was going to be.
There is this sense of relief, at least from the correspondents we're hearing from, some of the mayors we're talking to, saying this could have been much, much worse. What's your perspective on it?
If it had stayed in the Gulf, all of that warm water would have fueled it, and it would have been much stronger. Much unexpected, and Mother Nature has a mind of her own.
Right, Mother Nature, a mind of her... No, we control Mother Nature, Senator. With climate change, we're controlling Mother Nature. So he says, yeah, if it had stayed out in the Gulf, it'd have been stronger, Savannah. Was that what we want? So the forecasters are right? Listen to Chad Myers on CNN thanking Cuba for us.
We knew that this was the biggest storm America may ever have to encounter. What happened overnight was a godsend, and it was a blessing for America and not so much for Cuba, because the storm ran over the northern coast of Cuba, losing significant intensity in the process. As the storm exited Cuba overnight this morning, it did not have an eye wall that could recover and become a stronger storm. It never did get back anywhere near that Category 5. Without that brush with Cuba overnight, this would be a completely different story.
Fine, and that scientifically that's accurate. I mean, hurricanes over land do lose intensity, but I was watching all day yesterday. I kept switching back, and I kept hearing how bad it was. I didn't hear anything about weakening. I kept hearing how intense it was. This is the worst. This is the big one. Now, after the fact, wasn't so bad because Cuba, the interaction with Cuba weakened it. It went over the Cuban Keys, which is a little island range that parallels the northern Cuban coast. I don't think it ever actually impacted Cuban mainland, but it still hit as a Category 4. They're still trumpeting Category 4, but it wasn't the strongest that's hit. There's so much disinformation and stuff, it's impossible for people to keep up with it. I got a phone call. Oh, gosh, I don't know. It was during the football game last night, so either 6 or 6:30. And I looked at the number. I didn't recognize the number as a local number here. I didn't recognize it. And so I didn't accept the call because talking on the phone is a hearing challenge. And within seconds, I got a message from whoever it was that had called with just a shocking thing. So I called back, and it was from one of Don Ohlmeyer's sons. Don Ohlmeyer had passed away at 5:30 Pacific time yesterday afternoon. And, Ohlmeyer was a beast in the television business. He was with ABC during the inception of Monday Night Football. And though he didn't make Howard Cosell, because nobody made Howard Cosell, Ohlmeyer was instrumental in letting Cosell be Cosell. For those of you that are too young to know, for those of us in broadcasting, the thing about Howard Cosell was that he was one of the first high-profile TV personalities that wasn't technically in news who had freedom to say, do what he wanted to do. Management was unable to clock him, so to speak, and he became the envy of many people in media for this. And Ohlmeyer was instrumental in protecting Cosell from efforts to tame him or moderate him or whatever. And he then, after leaving ABC, many years there, went to NBC and became the president of NBC's primetime division, West Coast. And it was under his leadership that they came up with this killer lineup of comedies and shows that just owned, for example, Thursday nights at Seinfeld, and just any number of other shows that he, after seeing, purchased and arranged for them to air on NBC. And he had Ohlmeyer Communications. It was Don Ohlmeyer who invented the skins game, golf, that always aired on Thanksgiving weekend. 4 or 5 professionals would play in a tournament over a week, and they called it the skins game, and now everybody plays skins in golf. I never knew Don Ohlmeyer during all this. I knew of him, I knew his reputation, but I never knew him during all this. When ABC lost the rights, ABC, ESPN lost the rights to Monday Night Football to NBC, they hired Ohlmeyer to produce the first year, to executive, well, not, he actually in the truck produced the first year. And they were looking for somebody to pair with Al Michaels. So I offered myself. I thought, this is something I would love to do, and I would be great at it. And I had Cosell in my mind. I would love to do this. So I'm on the air making comments about how much I would love to do this. And at the time, there was a man named Howard Katz, who's now with the NFL, who actually is the chief of the unit in the NFL that does the schedule every year. But at the time, Howard Katz was an NBC Sports executive. And he called Ohlmeyer and said, I think this Limbaugh guy's serious. Why don't you talk to him? So Ohlmeyer was in Fort Lauderdale for a friend's wedding and called and said, why don't you come down? Let's talk about this. And I said, I never thought this would happen. I mean, I'm just bloviating about it on the air, but I never thought it would. I was serious in wanting to do it, but I never thought it would happen. I never made a call to anybody at NBC saying I was serious. I just did it all on the air. So I drove down. I'm listening to Mambo No. 5 by Lou Bega all the way down to Fort Lauderdale. It's about, from my house, it was about an hour, and I was going to play golf at Pine Tree on my way back from the meeting with Ohlmeyer. And I got down to the hotel he was staying at, and I walked in the lobby, and his partner, LJ, approached me and said, Don will be down in a moment. I said, wow, this is cool. This is big. So Ohlmeyer came down. We had a chat about it and talked about it. He said, look, why don't you come out and let's do an audition? I said, really? Yeah, you come out, and we'll get a tape. I'm not going to tell you which. No, I will tell you the game. I'll tell you the game. We'll get a tape. It was the Music City Miracle game. It was the Titans and the Buffalo Bills. He said, we'll replay the tape of that game, and you and Al can pretend it's live, and we'll just see how you do. And I said, really? He said, yeah. So went out and did that. He picked me up at the airport when I arrived. I think I flew into Burbank. He picked me up. Now, I didn't learn a lot about Ohlmeyer in the Fort Lauderdale meeting other than I liked him, but it wasn't an interview or anything like that. So I'm thinking NBC, West Coast chairman, ABC, this guy's got to be a typical media liberal. Just has to be. So I figure my chances here are nil, but I'm going to have fun with it. So we're in the car, and we're driving to the hotel. He's going to drop me off at the hotel, and then have dinner the next day, do the audition. And on the way to the hotel, he starts ripping the media, just like I do. And I thought, I'm being set up here. He set me up. I'm supposed to say, yeah, you're right, and I'm supposed to launch. Because I figured he's got to be part of the liberal leftist media establishment. So I was standoff. I'm very cool in the car, and I didn't go, yeah, man, you're right, and offer my own examples. None of that. I just nodded, and I said, yeah, I can't argue with that. Can't argue. So drops me off. We had dinner that night. The next day did the audition, and it went well. It went well, and he was shocked, and Al Michaels was pleasantly surprised and all that. I knew Al, but I'd never met Ohlmeyer. Anyway, that's the year they chose Dennis Miller. But the point is, through all of this, Don Ohlmeyer became a really, really close friend, and he was a really, really good guy. And do you remember, those of you who've been here a long time, I've told the story of how I was with friends at a golf club down in the desert in Palm Springs, Indian Wells. And a famous media person that you would all know joined us for dinner, and my friend just lacerated this guy on the subject of illegal immigration. It was Ohlmeyer. And I'm not going to tell you who the famous media guest was, but you would know who it is. But I also never identified Ohlmeyer. I always protect his privacy. But Ohlmeyer was one of the funniest. He and Roger Ailes are some of the most naturally funny people. But when Don got going on this stuff, it was it was marvelous to sit back and listen to it. And he had this poor TV star backwards and forwards and pretzeled inside out. The TV star was reduced. Well, look, if poor people around the world want to come to my country and improve their lot in life, I'm not going to say no. And Don said, well, what happens if the guy jumps your back fence and wants to date your daughter? Well, that would never happen, and I'm not. Anyway, we played a lot of golf together, and we had a lot of good times. I would host a thing at my house every spring that I call the Spring Fling. And just somebody, I never expected to meet. And when I did meet him, I never expected him to be kind of guy he was. And he was the most unassuming for the things that he had done in life, the things that he had accomplished. And it was just a cool thing to get to know him and to have he and LJ become friends of ours, become part of our life. I was just shocked when I found out that he had passed away. His son Kemper is who called me. He had 4 sons, and the text message said Don died at 5:30, and I didn't even know that he was sick. And it turns out that it had been a late discovery of cancer that had metastasized. And I'd gathered this was all really, really sudden. I mean, like days. And it was like a blow to the stomach. First, Roger Ailes passes away this year, and now Don. It was just a, shock and sadness, disappointment, and I didn't even know. And I hadn't seen him in a while. Chatted on him. This is a crazy thing, but when the iPhone 6 Plus came out, the big one, the 5.5-inch screen, I had an extra one, and I hey, Don, you want an iPhone 6 Plus? He said, yeah. So I FedExed him the 6 Plus, and LJ said, this is the greatest toy anybody's ever given me. He won't stop playing with it. It made my day. So when the new ones came, the 6S Plus, I sent him one. I said, you want an upgrade? Well, if you've got one hanging around. So I sent him that one. It was a great golfer. No matter, he hit the ball straight. By that, I mean, wherever he was aimed is where it went. The envy of everybody. He didn't bomb it, did it a long way, but if the guy didn't break 80, it was a bad day. So just sad turn of events. And with Roger Ailes passing now, Vince Flynn and his movie, screening that this afternoon. And all this happening within the time framework of the hurricane. It just really reinforces, folks, that you shouldn't take anything for granted, and particularly with the people in your life that you love. You always try to stay in touch and don't let any kind of momentary disagreements you have with people cause distance. It's just silly, because anything can happen at any time that change everything. But he's one of these people that you wish everybody could meet him and get to know him. He was that charismatic and welcoming and very confident. Love hanging around confident people. And he was that. He loved LJ. He often said, I decided there's nobody in the world I'd rather talk to than her. So, excuse me not playing golf today. It's okay. That's cool. So Don Ohlmeyer, 72 years old, same age that my mother and father both passed away at. Anyway, let me take a break. I'm finally got a clock here, folks. I now know exactly what time it is, which is a fascinating thing. A radio program with a working clock. Who knows what we can do next? We'll be back after this. Here's the story from the Politico. Notes from former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort on a meeting he attended last year with a Russian lobbyist and Donald Trump Jr. are not seen as damaging to the Trump family or campaign officials, according to anonymous government officials and others who have looked at the notes. This is the first time I can remember we've had a leak that actually helps exonerate Trump and his family. The first one. Maybe, you know what this could, maybe things are so bad the Mueller team is trying to prepare us for a letdown when they finally admit they didn't find any crime. I'm just kidding, folks. They're going to find something. That's why they're doing the investigation, and that's why it has no boundaries. They will find something. Officials, anonymous officials who have reviewed the notes say they're not likely to be independently vital to any case, if at all, because they're difficult to follow, particularly 1 year later. To be sure, the notes are not an exhaustive account of the meeting. Other things could have... See, there still might be some things that the media doesn't know. And then the next story in the Washington Times, Mueller's criminal investigators focus on Trump's tangled financial ties with the Russians. As I say, they're going to find something. Hey, I just saw the number. There's 7.5 million people in Florida without power. Now, I'm going to say something here that is going to rile up people again. But it's based on things I've heard them say. 7.5 million people without power. If you listen to the climate change people, and the people urge, in effect, what they are encouraging people to do is to dial back their use of fossil fuels. Coal is the primary fuel used to power plants, which I've often found fascinating. Everybody thinks the electric car is renewable energy and it's clean and safe. But what powers the batteries in the electric cars? I mean, you charge them up, you've got to go to a coal-fired power plant. In other words, coal is used to power electric cars, and they say there's nothing clean about coal. But with 7.5 million without power, there's another hurricane out there, Hurricane Jose. They don't quite know where it's going to go. They say it's a Category 4, Category 5, but it's out there doing circles. They're not quite sure where it's going to end up yet. Well, 7.5 million people in Florida without power, isn't that going to help? That means there's much less CO2 being spewed in the air in Florida. It means that there's much less climate damage happening because there's no electricity. There's no air conditioners running, no anything, because 7.5 million people are without power. And the global warming crowd, that's the kind of thing that they say we need to be thinking about. Going into reducing our use of fossil fuels. Well, this is a massive reduction in fossil fuels. 7.5 million people without power. I wonder if that could be enough of a reduction in CO2 and greenhouse gases from southern Florida to end up making Florida a smaller target for the next hurricane. Now, you watch and wait and see what they do with that. This is going to be fun. I'm just taking things they've said and applying them to a real-world situation and seeing how because this is the way I try to expose people who think things I think are crazy. And this is a golden opportunity to find out if these kinds of events, no electricity, no CO2s, can actually have an immediate impact in saving the climate and preventing this hurricane from hitting South Florida. Another one. Here's Stuart, Lake Wiley, South Carolina. I'm glad you waited, sir. Welcome to the EIB Network. Hi.
Thank you. I got to tell you, as of right now, I'm looking at Hurricane Irma as being one of the top 3 fake news stories of 2017. Last Friday, I was freaked out about it just like everybody else was. And I've got family down in South Florida, and we were all trying to convince them to leave, to evacuate. Finally, they did on Saturday. But they have a house, they have a business, they had a boat down there, they had to leave all that, of course. And so I started looking at wind speeds because I wanted to look into, okay, what was actually going on down there live on the ground. And when Irma apparently made landfall in Cujo Key, they were calling it a Category 4.
Right.
Well, there's all kinds of wind speed websites out there, and then NOAA and the National Weather Service has their buoys and weather stations with anemometers and all over the Keys in South Florida. Well, I was looking at all these live wind speeds.
Hey, Wiley, hang on just a second, because I'm going to run out of time here in the break. Can you hang on to the break to conclude this? Because I think I know where you're going, but I want you to be the one to say it. Back after this. I mean, that's a lot of CO2 that's not going to be spewed into the atmosphere. It might actually weaken Hurricane Jose. And if it did, can you imagine what would happen? The climate change. See, we've been right all along. Get rid of electricity, get people way back, cut their usage way back, and so forth. Go back to more reasonable, natural sources and so forth. I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm tweaking them here, folks. I'm jamming them, and they won't like that. So they'll get caustic again. Back to Stuart Lake. It's not. I called him Wiley. I'm sorry. He's in Lake Wiley, South Carolina. You think Irma is one of the top 3 fake news stories of the year? You're getting to your conclusion as to why.
Well,
because you found wind speeds that are not nearly as high as reported. Is that your point?
Right. I'm highly skeptical because, as I understand it, the category scale is based solely on wind speed. Wind speed is globally standardized as being measured at a height of 10 meters. And all the wind speeds being reported at by the official anemometers at the weather stations and the buoys all around Cujo Key, all around Marco Island, were well below 100-mile-an-hour sustained wind speeds. That's the other thing. These wind speeds have to be sustained for a period of 1 minute to qualify it as a certain category. And they're talking about gusts and stuff,
well, you know,
weren't there.
I know a lot of people who are skeptical of some of this stuff too, as you've been, who've told me that they have actually logged into data sources. You can find, if you know where to go, you can find the daily temperature readout of water buoys and various other temperatures recording instruments in various places, islands and so forth in the Caribbean. And I've had people tell me that the actual recorded wind speeds are sometimes less than what's reported. But I'll guarantee if the Hurricane Center said that there were 145-mile-an-hour winds, there were somewhere. They're not going to lie about that. I mean, it might have been for a square mile at 1,000 feet, but there were that. They'll have to be able to confirm that. But I get your point. Look, Hurricane Irma with all seriousness here, was a devastating storm to a lot of people. It got 7 million people without power, and it raked, St. Martin and Buda. It destroyed the home of Richard Branson. Now stop and think. Richard Branson owns Virgin Air. He's one of the biggest pro-climate change guys in the world, and a hurricane came along and destroyed, leveled his house on his private island, Necker Island. Just leveled everything. These hurricanes, they don't care whether you're pro-climate change or not. St. Martin was devastated. Barbuda was devastated. Cuba, when they tell you about the damage in Cuba, and it was severe, what they never tell you is Cuba is a third world place. The most modern car in Cuba outside the leadership's a 57 Chevy. They tell you all these homes destroyed on these barrier islands, the Cuban Keys. They don't tell you they're made out of tin. These are poor countries, and they don't have building codes and building standards, and they don't have anything quite like the building standards and materials and so forth that we have here. But it was a serious storm. And I understand the Hurricane Center overwarning. I totally understand the Hurricane Center preparing people for the worst. For example, when the first time they put the track on Florida, it was up the East Coast. And then they kept moving it west, but they never took it off the Florida Panhandle. Because once they put it on, they're committed. They can't, on the basis of models or forecasts, move that track. Once you have however many numbers of millions of people preparing for a direct hit because of your forecast, you have to stick with it. They can't, for example, they couldn't have moved this track west and have it hitting, say, in Mobile, Alabama. Because then if it did that, fine. But if it didn't and came back and hit Florida where it did, you'd have a bunch of people mad that the forecast was wrong. So, and then when they start talking about Category 4, Category 5, I totally understand overwarning in terms of preparing. The last thing you'd want to do is underwarn. If you think it's going to be a Category 4, but you're not sure, you don't want to say it's only going to hit as a Category 2. You just can't. You've got to have people prepared. I understand all of that. That's not my whole point about it was never that it was fake, that the warnings were never fake, that the strength of the hurricane. I never said anything of the sort. I questioned how the media deals with all of this stuff. Anyway, I appreciate the call, Randall, very much. There's a story that we couldn't do on Friday for obvious reasons, my friends. One of the major credit reporting firms announced late on Thursday afternoon that they were subject to a security breach that could affect 143 million Americans. So far, the organization has determined that the credit card numbers for 200,000 customers were accessed, in addition to the Social Security numbers and personal data for about 180,000 customers. The company discovered the unauthorized access late in July, but we only heard about it Thursday afternoon. This is Equifax. Now, to show you how widespread this is, I don't think I've got anything to do with these. Equifax, but I just got a note from some people telling me that, yeah, you do, and we need to take some steps. And so it's affected a lot more people than may be aware of it, is the point. And it is big. If a credit reporting bureau can be subject to a breach this big, it just goes to show you how effective cyber thieves and cyber thugs can be. And there is a way to protect yourself from this kind of online identity theft, which is what this is. And look, this happened in July, and nobody knew about it until Thursday. That's the thing about identity theft, is that you don't even know it's happened. Even if it's somebody stealing your credit card number somewhere at a restaurant or whatever, at a store, you don't know about it until the bill comes in for the next 30 days. You just don't know. There is a way to protect yourself from this kind of online identity theft, which, if a credit reporting company can be hacked like this, nobody's safe. And that company is LifeLock. Here's what happens when you become a LifeLock member. You give them your credit card numbers and your social security number, and automatically an online profile of you is created by virtue of your behavior, how you spend, where you spend. Nobody there's monitoring you personally. It's just a pattern on a chart that's created. And nobody even notices that until there is a spike in your behavior. And it's the computers that notice this. They have their advanced algorithms. So let's say you have a LifeLock account and the LifeLock computer spots a huge spike, more spending than you usually do. They send you an alert right then asking if it's you engaging in the spending. And you reply to the alert. Yes, it is. No, it's not. If it is you, everything goes away. Everybody's fine. If it's not you, they get into gear at lightning speed trying to track down what's going on. And they stay on it until they find out what's happened. In the meantime, you are alerted that something is maybe going wrong, and you can take steps yourself. Now, nobody can spot every example of this. There's no one company that can stop all identity theft. Nobody can monitor all transactions. But I'm telling you, there's nobody better at this than LifeLock. And the one thing they have that nobody else does, let's say somebody does steal your online identity, and you're alerted to it, but they can't stop it, don't know about it in time. LifeLock has a staff, people they call a restoration team. They're based in the United States, and all they do is work with you to fix it so that your credit rating is restored, so that your accounts are restored, so that your relationship with your credit card companies is restored. That's what they do. So you're covered in multiple ways here. LifeLock is the absolute best, and they can help you see more of these threats to your identity. Go to LifeLock.com and mention my name when you sign up. Get 10% off, or you can call them at 800-440-4833. Either way, use my name as the promo code. That'll get you 10% off. LifeLock.com or 800-440-4833. You hate Trump too, right? Trump's a pig, right? Things like this. I mean, that's not specific. I don't know what the actual questions were, but of course, what's a poor contestant supposed to do? Figuring out, I actually like President Trump. I had dinner with President. You had dinner with Trump? No, they don't want to go there. So they've politicized everything, folks, is the point. I appreciate the call, Cynthia. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, before we moved the program to our super secret location here out on the left coast, we backed up all of our computers. In fact, we have one of the most massive, you people don't know, we had to back up and transfer. Many of the central servers for email and the program are located there. And what if power goes out and a generator fails? We couldn't afford it. We had to back up and offload everything to a secondary location, then get it back up and running, and it was seamless. And it was a major operation. We made backups of backups. This is how you protect all of the data, not just on your computer, but in your network, on your system. And whether it's your personal computer or your company's, the data on those computers needs to be backed up. And this is a classic example of why. And why your backup needs to be off-site. In other words, not where you are. And for that, nobody better than iDrive.com. iDrive like iPhone. iDrive makes backing up your data easy. You quickly can download their software online. It starts to back up your computer data in the background. You don't even know what's happening while you use your computer. You can schedule the backups to be done every day, and they're incremental. Once you get the big one done, the first one, then everything is incrementally backed up after that. Only the things that change are backed up, and therefore the existing backup is the latest and greatest and has all of the current data. iDrive.com wants to make it easy and affordable for everyone to be able to back up their data. It starts with easy-to-use software at iDrive.com, includes introductory pricing. Get this. Plans start at less than $6 a month, and today, 90% off your first year's service. You can't afford not to do this. Go online today at iDrive.com and use my name as you quickly set up an account.